Hi guys, my name is Otso. This is Uusa Hobbies and welcome to the first video on this channel. Today we're gonna make some sick looking bases. These bases are really easy and fast to make, even if you have never based any miniatures before. Most of the stuff they require are found in most hobbyists' arsenal already. They are also really cheap to make, and all of the materials required have infinite potential in basing and making other miniature related projects. The tools you're gonna need for this project is an old paintbrush, an X-Acto knife or scissors, some clippers, any wire, and some superglue and PVA glue. The materials I used are some different Citadel paints, some grass tufts, some texture paint, and most importantly, some sort of corkboard. I will list all of the tools and materials used in this video in the description below, as well as talk about why I used them in length while doing the bases. The models you see me showing in the background are made by the same exact method a few days before. The three bases in the front are the bases I am going to use on my Dark Apostle and his Dark Disciples, and are the ones we are going to base today. Two of the bases are 32mm standard bases, and one is a bigger 40mm base. First, I'll give you a few seconds of backstory behind today's project. The last army I started was Tau, but I lost my motivation really quickly. Even though I think the Tau is one of the cleanest looking factions, the painstaking process of getting there just wasn't for me. I tried another scheme, but I think it was too sloppy. Even so, I might give them another shot someday. I almost had a 2-year break from the hobby. Now that I'm back with newfound motivation, or maybe even obsession for the Warhammer franchise nowadays, I thought my first army after a while would be something really grimdark. So I did what anybody would do in a mid-hobby crisis. I started a Wordbearers army. And while I was contemplating on what sort of base these miniatures would get, I was listening on some lore, and in the lore, the Wordbearers are one of the most fanatic believers of the Dark Gods. And that's why I thought that the scheme for the bases would be some sort of a ruined imperial temple. I took inspiration for the bases from Chernobyl and other places that have been abandoned and nature has been pushing through. So that's what I went with. And today I'm gonna show you how to do them. Let's get to it. We are going to start by cutting up some corkboard. The corkboard I am using is actually a 2mm thick piece of cut to size engine cover gasket, because I work at an auto parts shop. You can find similar products that are way easier to cut and trim from hobby or arts and crafts stores. A piece of corkboard will last you forever, and this one only cost me 10 euros. This was also the only thing I had to buy for this project. First, I cut a long, about an inch wide strip of the board and cut the strip into small squares. To start off, just laying the tiles on the clear bases will give you a good idea of what you want to make out of them. I would suggest building each base out of 4 tiles, spaced a few millimeters apart from each other to leave gaps for debris and grass poking out. When you have figured out a shape you want to make out of the tiles, it's time to rip up some pieces of them. I think ripping only 1 or 2 pieces is maximum here. It maintains the look of the broken floor. You can also rip 1 tile in 2 pieces and put them back where they were, to make it look like the tile was only cracked. Here's why cork is such a good material. Once ripped, it looks like broken stone or some dirt. The cut lines, on the other hand, makes it look like some cut stone slabs. Imagination and reference pictures are key here. Remember to use logic too. If a piece is only broken and hasn't exploded in thin air, the pieces of it will probably be left somewhere in its vicinity. Remember to leave a few gaps. Also, if you are planning on doing a big squad, maybe add some variety by not adding variety. Someone could be standing on some tiles that are still intact. The next step is to whip out the PVA glue. Don't add too much or it will dribble down the sides. Then glue the pieces down. Once the tiles are glued down, you can move them around for a good while before they dry. So if you happen to think about something to change in the middle of everything, it's no big deal. After everything seems in place, take some nice looking parts you have ripped out of the pieces. Glue them around in the gaps you have left and also randomly on top of the tiles. They look like shattered bricks. Even though it wouldn't look good right now, just trust the process. Once painted, these will look incredible. The base of the Dark Apostle is somewhat more complicated. He's standing on a so-called tactical rock, which also has some tiles on it, so I cannot just wing it like I would do with the other bases. I marked out the shape of the tactical rock and I ripped it following the lines. The main tile I want to build the base around is the one under him in an upward angle. I don't want the piece just to come out of nowhere, so I will build him a small pile of rubble he will be standing on. I also glued down some small pieces as broken bricks around the rubble pile as it took shape. When you are happy with how your tile floor or pile of rubble is looking, just cut the overhanging parts from the rims to make them look clean. Some slight overhang can also be used as an effect, like I did on the larger base. Be careful while cutting with a hobby knife. They are very sharp. If you need to, remember to ask for an adult to help. Always cut away from yourself. Now, I will show you how to build a small wall you saw in the beginning of the video with the Chaos Space Marine that had the heavy bolter. Just rip a piece in two, shape it a bit and take a nice cross section of some tiles. They fit there nicely. Once you add some glue in between, they will stand on their own. Just remember to add the rest of the wall as small rubble around it as well. Of course, you can use these techniques for other types of base buildings as well. We're now done with the basing part. The next thing is to paint them up. And before that, I'd just like to say, making these bases will take you an hour or two, but this video took me several days to make. If you find this video informative or helpful, please subscribe and leave a comment of what you thought about it. The next part is simple. Add some texture paint, like the Games Workshop's Astrogranite Debris all over the places where you can still see the plastic of the base. Also add some roughly around the scattered bricks you have glued down. Put a thin layer randomly on the tiles to rough them up. You can also rough up the corkboard if you scrape it with your nail or hobby knife. Don't overdo it or they won't look like tiles anymore. If you know how to make your own texture paint, go for it. There are videos on YouTube how to make that. You will save a few bucks more. This process takes so little of it though that I use Games Workshop's own. Now we are adding some structural beams inside the cement. I do not recommend the way I'm doing this. I am using needles because I had no wire. I was wearing safety glasses for the record. If you are underaged or sane, please use wire and not needles. This tutorial is more how I made it than how you should do it. Now that that's out of the way, basically poke anything somewhat pointy in the soft cork wall and snip it to a nice piece so that it leaves sticking out. Now it is time to paint the base. I will explain every coat briefly. You can add or leave some steps out. It really depends on the look you want to go with. My advice would be, if you have some lighter toned models, a darker base will look better. And if you have a darker schemed model, a brighter base will do the trick. My final result will be a mix of these two. Some dark crevices while the tiles pop out. Also a black rim to tie it all together and make it look finished. I actually had forgotten the paint recipe I used for the first time, so I had to figure it out again. That is why you may see the base switch colors in some clips. I wrote it down as I figured it out, and I will explain how I ended up doing it. First, we are going to paint the whole base with 2 decent coats with Games Workshop's Dawnstone. We want full coverage. When the grey Dawnstone has dried, it is time to add some wash. If you know how to make your own washes, again, go for it. I, on the other hand, am using Games Workshop's Agrax Earthshade. The wash will go down in 2 coats as well. The first coat will be added heavily in the crevices and cracks to bring them out. Once it has dried enough, a second coat is painted all over to make every detail pop out. When this layer dries up, you will start to see a major difference. The base starts to come to life.
Yes, so many secrets to share.
The next part is to add some brown mud under the rubble. I am using Games Workshop's Dryad Bark, but you can use any brown you want. You only want to paint the parts that are the most damaged. These are also the parts I will be adding grass tufts. The next coat is a Drybrush of Administratum Grey. Drybrushing is a very useful technique to add highlights without needing to be accurate. It is achieved by rubbing about 90% of the paint away from your brush to a paper towel and then just slapping and rubbing it to the surface of the model. It will make the edges and the higher parts stand out more, and it will build nice contrast against the darker crevices. Once you are done with the dry brushing, it is time to make the last tweaks. For me, I wanted mine to be a bit darker, so I did a last coat of 50-50 mix of Agrax Earthshade and water. The painted base should look something like this, maybe darker or brighter, depending on your preference. For some color, let's add some grass tufts. I prefer the weathered looking ones. If you happen to have bright ones, some wash will darken them down as well. I will use about 1 to 1.5 small grass tufts per base, which I will cut in 3 smaller pieces to fit the cracks. Feel free to put them wherever you want, but I prefer to put them in the deepest cracks and gaps between the tiles. If the sticky side of the tuft doesn't want to stick, add the tiniest bit of Superglue. It works like a charm. You can also use the tip of your hobby knife to poke some tufts deeper into the gaps. I didn't like that some of the grass was hanging over the edge, so I trimmed it down using scissors. I removed the dark Diciple from his temporary base and superglued him on his new one. And oh my, doesn't he look good on that base. The color scheme fits so well. Now to finish up, we just need to paint the rim black. And he's ready for the tabletop. Or to show off. I recommend painting the rims when you are otherwise done with the model, so that you don't damage the finish. That's why I'm painting some rims of finished models and only one of the ones I did today. For the rims of the base, I'm doing 2 to 3 coats of Abaddon Black. I also tried fitting on the dark apostle on his base, and I'm so looking forward to finishing that model and see him in his glory on his pile of rubble and skulls. I'll be sure to post him on Instagram and also here on YouTube when he's done. And the models are finished. Look at these bad boys. I'm so stoked about these, and I can't wait to finish the rest of them. I also hope somebody finds this video useful, because I worked really hard on it for many days. So that's how you build some interesting bases for your minis that stand apart from the normal pebbles and grass that many of us just do because they're easy to make. You can of course use these techniques with any type of basing or structure or whatever you want to make. They are easy enough to make in many quantities. The next video will probably be me nerding about some old retro minis or maybe painting them or showing them off. I actually want your suggestions in the comments of what sort of content you might want to see. Also any criticism, anything like that, any interactions in the comments, more than appreciated. So as I said, this was my first video on this channel. I appreciate it that you stuck around till the end. Please like the video or subscribe to the channel. That would mean a lot to me. It would be a great way to support a small creator. You can also check out my Instagram where I post some pictures of minis that I have completed. I actually don't have that many pictures yet, but I'll keep posting while I keep painting. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.